Oh my God! I feel like I had a point there, but now I'm just having too much fun actually driving.
The numbers that cars put out today have gotten absolutely insane. 20 years ago, it would have taken over $1 million to get something with 1,000 horsepower off the lot. Now you can get the same horsepower for less than 200,000. And it's not just the advent of EVs. Cars like the Dodge Demon 170 and now the C8 ZR1 are putting this power in the hands of the mildly wealthy, not just the super rich. But as horsepower becomes more accessible, is the increase still appreciable?
Is the 670 horsepower of this Z06 wasted on me, who's literally never driven anything above 200 horsepower on track? And will I be able to tell the difference between that, this E-Ray, and this C8 Stingray? And more importantly, can the average consumer tell the difference? The Drive built its legacy on YouTube with knowledgeable and experienced pundits who could distill down the subtle differences in unattainable dream cars and do so in a coherent and melodic way. I am Joey and I will be doing none of that today. I don't have the butt of a Chris Harris or a Matt Farah. And what I mean by that is I haven't driven the breadth of cars that they did to be able to speak on the nuances between these cars. Now, don't get me wrong, I've got my track experience in wheel-to-wheel and time attack, but it's all been in a 100 horsepower Yaris, so my butt dyno is out of tune. Today that might be okay, because I think that most people walking up to a Chevy dealership with C8 money in hand don't have the experience of a professional car reviewer. And if your butt dyno isn't supercar initiated, what do the tiers of C8 actually mean to you? Okay, so here's what I'm getting at. When home video changed from VHS to DVD, there was a very noticeable difference. Then from DVD to HD Blu-ray, again, an appreciable change. But once we started to get into 4K, we began to hit a plateau where the average consumer had a hard time telling the difference. As any technology progresses, we see the same curve all the time. Sometimes it's about the limitations of technology, but a lot of times it's about people's ability to perceive the change. So, does the same thing happen with horsepower? That's what I wanted to find out. NCM Motorsports Park kindly offered me a chance to take 3 of their C8 Corvettes out on track. The C8 is poetically perfect for this because in pursuit of more horsepower, GM completely overhauled the Corvette formula, making this the first mid-engine production Corvette ever. The C8 Stingray is the base model Corvette, and with a mid-mounted 6.2-liter V8 making 490 horsepower, it outclasses anything I've ever driven. But taking that even further, the Z06 with the Z07 track package comes with larger carbon ceramic rotors with 6-piston calipers as opposed to the 4-piston, new dampers, new control arms, and a limited slip diff to keep its Michelin tires planted on the track. And the centerpiece of this whole car, a 5.5-liter flat plane crank V8 making 670 horsepower. And the E-Ray reaches that power output in a completely different way. It produces a total of 650 horsepower thanks to an electric motor driving the front wheels, making it not only the first hybrid Corvette, but also the first all-wheel drive Corvette. Now, I know what 100 horsepower feels like. I'm definitely gonna feel the jump to the C8, but once we get to that point, does the sensation start to plateau? To find out, I'm gonna start by setting a few laps in the C8. Now, NCM is a very tight track, and these are gonna be lead follow laps, so I'm not really pushing the C8 to the limit, but you know, that's not really the point here. I'm gonna turn down the AC as much as I can so that you guys can hear, and also so I get that full 490 horsepower. Look, I know that these cars have been out for a while. Plenty of people have talked about these. This is not a new review, but I've never done it and I gotta start somewhere. Cool double apex here. And then on the power. Oh yeah, no, I'm happy to keep going. We can go a little faster. I wanna see what the Corvette experience is all about. I'm at half throttle, come on. So far, it feels, I mean, yes, it feels very different from the track cars that I've had in the past, but as far as predictability and the confidence that I have in it, it feels very balanced. It feels like I have the right amount of grip for the right amount of horsepower. At this pace, the car felt poised and undramatic, so much so that I didn't notice when I went faster on that short straight than I'd ever gone on track before. In my bucket of bolts hatchback, 102 miles an hour on the back straight at Big Willow feels absolutely terrifying, but here I was able to do over 120 without really noticing, pushing, and certainly without stressing the car. The acceleration was dramatically different, but the actual high speed was a much more subtle experience. Already, the increase in horsepower is really only apparent in the front straight, because in the braking zones and corners, the Stingray had the mechanical grip to match pace. I was nowhere near the limit of this car's capability, but still, 90% of C8 owners, they won't even do this much. I only had a few laps to get my eye in though, before it was time to move to the Z06. The C8 Corvette Z06 swaps the Stingray's 6.2-liter V8 for a 5.5-liter flat plane crank that will rev out to 8,600 RPM. This increases the horsepower by 180, or in other words, nearly double the horsepower of my current track car. And on this tight track, that wasn't exactly comforting. But the first time you hear that LT6, all your worries go away. So already, just that sound alone would be reason enough to spend the extra $30K. Even though I had more horsepower to manage, I felt like I could take more risk in the Z06. I could brake later and carry more speed through the corners. You can feel the increase in horsepower, but you can also feel the increase in mechanical grip. This is a track car. I remember when the Acura NSX came out, the newer NSX, and people were saying that it just didn't feel as connected as the old one. With better brake feel, better tires, and even just the notes of the engine talking to you more, the Z06 gives you more of everything in equal measure, which means it's just more fun. But Corvette has been making that supercar feeling attainable to people who have not ever had this much horsepower under their foot. Am I driving this car to the limits? Not even close, nowhere near. But am I having fun? Oh yeah. Maybe you want a car that is beyond your limits. Maybe you want a car that you feel like you could push and you would never ask more than it is capable of. Oh my God! The Z06 is at home here, and the increase in horsepower is more manageable because you're in something designed to manage that power. So what if I had the same increase in horsepower, but in less of a track car? This is the C8 Corvette E-Ray, and it has almost the same horsepower as the Z06, with almost none of the track-dedicated parts. While the Z06 is a more hardcore track toy, the E-Ray is all the comfort and daily drivability of the standard C8, and more importantly, the Z06 was on Pilot Sport 4Ss, while the C8 and the E-Ray were both on all seasons. Functionally, the E-Ray is a C8 Stingray with the front axle swapped out for a hybrid unit, adding 150 horsepower. That sounds like it would be a further departure from the C8, but really the two of them are very similar in terms of everyday driving. On track though, that's a different story. Because this is all-wheel drive, it wants to pull you out of the slow corners a lot more. You actually have drive in the front wheels rather than just being pushed from the back. Because you have so much more going on in the front axle, the steering is definitely heavier. But coming out of a corner, there's none of that rear wheel drive oversteer that I'm getting because I have a lead foot. Oh, there we go. And now you're hearing what the car can do. Well, this one does certainly feel like I'm doing something wrong. Oh boy. The E-Ray communicates in a completely different way to the Z06. The steering feels heavy and unsure. The acceleration out of corners might be faster, but it doesn't have the drama of that flat plane crank V8 in your ears. The sensation of speed is much weaker, to the point where this was the car where I really felt like I was missing my braking points. But I'm now so much more aware of that elevation change, and I am so much more aware of this track, because I really don't feel anywhere near as confident as I did in the Z06. And maybe because I had more of a race car and I was going slower. So the original question was, would I be able to tell the difference in horsepower between these three cars? Well, yes and no. The two that feel the most similar to me are the C8 Stingray and the C8 Z06. The Z06 feels like a strong C8. Same recipe, but everything in larger quantities, which make for a similarly balanced experience. It's like having a large versus a small of the same drink. You'd assume that the all-wheel drive of the E-Ray would give you more confidence in the corners and more evenly make use of the grip on exit when you put your foot down, but it just becomes more unmanageable. To save myself any embarrassment, I wasn't tracking lap times, but I did manage a higher top speed on the front straight with the Stingray than I did with the E-Ray. This is one of the things that enthusiasts have been saying about EVs for years. 1,000 horsepower doesn't matter if it's numb and sensationless. Now, the E-Ray is by no means as bad as an EV in that sense, but the added horsepower feels like it's more likely to get you in trouble than actually give you any benefit. But the Z06, with more mechanical grip and better communication, felt like a more predictable and more confidence-inspiring car. Although I will say that the absolute party piece of the E-Ray is its launch. The all-wheel drive and instant torque of the front motor pull this off the line as fast as any EV, if not faster. The Z06 is built for breaking hearts at the track. The E-Ray is built for breaking hearts at the stoplight. So horsepower is not the end-all be-all. Okay, yes, of the three, the highest horsepower one, the Z06, was my absolute favorite. But if I were to choose between the Stingray and the E-Ray, I would choose the Stingray every day, especially if you spent the money you save on better tires. Coming from the world of modified track cars, I've never put much stock into the tires your car comes with from the dealership, because for me, that was always 500 treadwear economy options, and I'm swapping them for 200 treadwear track tires before I can do anything else. But if I'm thinking about the average Joe, the stock tire does matter. And at this performance level, you want to have confidence on your street tires. All three cars are available with the Pilot Sport 4S's, and the E-Ray and Z06 can even get the Michelin Supersport Cup 2Rs. In 2025, this comparison will get even more ridiculous. The new ZR1 slaps 2 turbos onto the existing Z06 powertrain. At over 1,000 horsepower, it will be the most powerful Corvette ever sold by Chevrolet, and it will still cost less than the entry-level Lamborghini. And like Lamborghini, it won't be offered with all seasons as standard. I think there aren't many people in the world that would get out of this Stingray and say that it was not enough for me, and even fewer for the Z06. I also think it takes a very mature person to buy the right amount of car for them, especially as horsepower that was once for oligarchs and CEOs makes its way to the upper middle class. Look, the drive was built on putting charismatic hosts in amazing cars, and I am acutely aware that this was not that. So thank you for joining us on this journey. We are rebuilding the channel, and it's an experiment all the time. We're honestly just happy that you're here, and hopefully I will catch you in the next one.